We begin our examination of the implementation of the Equinox Video widget within Design Center by examining a simple configuration, which is a TV with multiple local sources connected to the various inputs of the TV. For the most part, what we want the customer to experience will be identical regardless of the configuration. So we'll use the same set of sources for all of our scenarios, the same set we showed in the widget introduction segment. These are a satellite receiver, Blu-ray player, media server, and a gaming console. Let's begin our examination of the scenario by reviewing the subsystem schematic for the guest room. Here we see that the four sources are connected to separate inputs of the TV. The IRX2 provides the serial ports for the TV as well as the IR channels for the three controllable devices. We'll need to make sure we represent all of the components of this subsystem, their interconnections, and specific characteristics. Let's now look at the guest room within the Design Center file. We've already inserted an object representing each component, sources, TV, and the IRX2. The IRX2 and our generic device used to represent the gaming console were brought in from the Vantage objects within the audio-video category. All others were brought in from drivers. A distinguishing name was applied to each device as well as a display name for view within the Equinox app. A user prompt was inserted for the game console to instruct the user to grab the game console remote control. Now the starting point to represent interconnections for the video widget, regardless of the configuration, is the display device, which is a TV or a projector. So we will select the guest room TV object. Notice the Input Configuration tab at the bottom of the object editor, which we will select. This tab is here specifically for the implementation of the Equinox Video widget, and unless we complete the Input Configuration table, there will be no video widget zone created for this viewing location. So we will complete the table. In this simple case, all the devices are connected to distinct inputs on the TV. I should mention here that only a TV driver with discrete input selection will work here. If the only input changing options presented are next source or previous source, this cannot work. We will simply assign each device to its respective TV interface. The satellite box will go to HDMI 1. HDMI 2 will have the Blu-ray player. HDMI 3 gets our media server, which is the Apple TV. And finally, HDMI 4 is going to be assigned to the game console. What we will do next is consider the amplification option for audio. In this simple configuration, we are using the TV speakers for sound regardless of the source. So next to each source, we check the box in the far right column under the speaker icon to represent that we will be using the TV speakers for that device. Now when we change volume levels within the widget, the TV audio is what will be controlled. Now we also need to assign control interconnections. With the TV object still selected, we'll click on the Properties tab. The TV has a serial port which we will attach to the IRX2 serial port 1. Make sure that we're selecting the correct IRX2. Next we connect the IR. So we will go to the IRX2, channel 1 gets assigned to the satellite receiver for the guest. Channel 2 will be assigned to the Blu-ray player for the guest. Channel 3 gets assigned to the Apple TV for the guest. And we're done. Now we would be done, except that we need to think about how we want each device to be initialized when it is selected. For example, the Blu-ray player is going to time out when it's not used, so we want to tell it to turn on when we select it. For this purpose, we have the ability to assign a task to fire each time the Blu-ray player is selected. Back to the Input Configuration tab of the TV, notice the Widget Action column. For each potential input, we can assign a distinct task, which we must have already created. We will click on the ellipses button and select a pre-written task for this purpose. For this particular Blu-ray player, we don't have discrete on and off commands, but rather a power toggle. So the problem would be that if we send the command and the player is already on, we'd be turning it off, defeating the purpose. So to work around this, we're going to apply the Vantage Quad Sensor. We will go to Input 2 of the IRX, and we will assign a quad sensor. With the quad sensor properly set up, we can detect the power state of the Blu-ray player, and then the command will only be sent when the power state is off. So let's now select the Blu-ray player. We'll click the box next to the power tracking to enable it. Make sure that the correct sensor is selected, and now this will work perfectly. There is no need to add any conditional logic to the task. If we examine the task within the programming view, we will see that it is simply a power on. To recap, we added objects to our Design Center file to represent each component of the subsystem. We modified the names and display names appropriately. We used the TV Input Configuration tab to represent audio and video interconnections. We selected the TV as the audio device for each source component. We assigned a widget action to the Blu-ray player to turn the power on whenever the player is selected as source. We assigned the control inputs to the IRX2. We used the quad sensor to make sure we only send the power command when the power state is off. So now, after we configure the IRX2 and we upload the file to the controller, we will have completed the implementation of the video widget for this viewing zone.